mentioned exactly. You mentioned.
What's the plan? Are there going to be more CBSA guards at the border? What are you going to do about increasing strength there?
There's your deputy prime minister. Yes, and all right, I got to plug myself in here. All right, we didn't do that. Anyway, that is your deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland. Sorry for the improvisation here, but sometimes we're rushing at the last minute. Hopefully not too much. Got a lot we want to talk about today, and thank you for your patience. We were doing a sound check this morning. That's why we had some problems. Okay. Thanks for your patience this morning. So the Chrystia Freeland just seems to go berserk every time anybody brings up the border. Why do you think that might be? It appears she's got some issues there now. If she's suffering some serious health problems, I certainly can sympathize and empathize with her, but perhaps she should consider taking a leave of absence or stepping down. And that's clearly what's going on here. But when we come back, we'll be discussing that. And I found an interview from yesterday with an, shall we say, a formerly fairly high official in the Conservative Party who I think gets it. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please subscribe. Please become a member of the station. Support us in whatever way you can. We appreciate your support. Share this broadcast right now with your friends and family. At least like it, because we beat the YouTube censorship. It is censorship. It's still there. They're still insisting that we do this. And I've been reminded by my producer that I'm not selling the stuff in our store again. So here, please bear with me for a minute before we get in. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, folks. Don't listen to Justin Trudeau. We need this kind of attitude in Canada right now, because let me tell you, Justin Trudeau will fight tooth and nail to stay as leader of the Liberal Party and as Prime Minister of Canada, and he will use every trick in the Liberal handbook to do that. So we have to be vigilant, and we have to have perseverance to fight this battle to the end. As I've been saying since this station went on the air, we need to resolve to resist. And we need to fight for our free speech and our democratic rights to say what we believe, to speak, as John Diefenbaker said. And don't forget that t-shirt that's available out there in the store. I speak as a free Canadian, free to speak, free to believe in what I choose. And Justin Trudeau is not going to interfere with that. Thanks for being a part of the KRAYDEN'S Right Resistance, and we'll see you again soon. So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need a political change, but we also need to resolve to resist. And that's what we're doing every day, is resolving to resist. I got so much to share with you today. Got some good news, though. Remember I was talking the other day about how I was watching Fox News, and Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, former CIA director, was on the show talking about what the victory of Donald Trump means for America. And the news host, Brett Baer, was on with somebody else. I can't remember who else was on with him. But they were just literally cheerleading him to get a job with the new admin, Mike. Get a job. You know, you'll go out. We sure hope Trump picks you. And, of course, I'm thinking, God, no, not Mike Pompeo back again. This is the guy who wanted literally to assassinate, or at least to subjugate, Assange, and this was a complete. He's not a friend of Donald Trump. He's not a friend of free speech. Julian Assange. So he was the one who wanted to go after Julian Assange, and believe me, this Mike Pompeo was no friend of democracy. But Trump is saying no to Mike Pompeo and no to Nikki Haley. Thank you. That's good news to see. More good news. Abacus data poll just came out yesterday. Conservatives lead by 19, so they've dropped 1 point basically. Abacus has had them 20 points ahead for 6 months. And you look at these numbers, yeah. 41% support. Abacus is saying they dropped 3 since October. I wonder why. That would be. And the Liberals in the basement. New Democrats in this poll are going up. I don't know why. So there's a real conflict of the polling right now. But the common denominator, of course, the Conservatives are anywhere from 19 to 21 points ahead. And that's good news. That's very good news, because we've got to get rid of this Trudeau government sooner or later. Now, what is happening in the States? We mentioned Mike Pompeo not joining, and Trump is definitely trying to keep the deep state out. But this is very worrisome. I find this incredible that the Pentagon officials are actually discussing how to be insubordinate. And you remember, of course, the Pentagon is the military. The military should be the last place in your administration where you have people working against you and not obeying orders. That's what the military is about. They do obey orders. They are subservient to the elected political people. And they should be, at the very least, taking the orders of the commander-in-chief, which is Donald Trump, which will be Donald Trump come January. But they're already plotting, apparently, to find ways around that. Now, I was in the military, as I'm never tired of saying, and you didn't sit around finding ways to subvert the orders coming from the civilian government. You might not agree with those orders. You might not like that civilian government. I didn't at times, but I followed orders because I had taken an oath to do so. And it was that simple. But here's a recent story from the Post. Millennial FBI senior execs are shell-shocked over the Trump victory, and they're actually finding ways to retire because they know the gig is up, or the jig is up. The gig is up too. No more of this. It's not going to happen anymore. And I think that is indicative. Here's I don't have a lot of time for Wolf Blitzer. I never have, but here's Wolf trying to come to terms with this.
Well, I am a little concerned, honestly, if the federal bureaucracy, whether it's in the Pentagon or any other agency, is already having discussions about how to countermand the commander-in-chief. I mean, let's remember how this works. He got elected president. He's the commander-in-chief. He gives the orders. They follow them. And so I don't like the idea, candidly, Wolf, of non-elected government people at any level having meetings with each other about how to thwart the duly elected president of the United States.
No, that's not what they're there for. To subvert the orders of the President of the United States. That's clearly not what they're there for. And before I forget, I should mention my special guest tomorrow at 8:30 will be Viva Fry, the Canadian who's now doing. He's ambidextrous politically, as I like to say, as I try to be on this station. He's covering U.S. news because he's out of Florida now, but he's also covering Canadian news. And we're going to be talking about what I brought up the other day, which why are the committees, especially the Security Committee, the Public Safety and Security Committee, why are they navel-gazing, obsessing about Russian propaganda and Russian agents under every bed, accusing journalists like David Puglisi of being Russian agents, and going after, of course, the people who were involved in this indictment in the United States, or at least the Canadians who were involved in that indictment with the Department of Justice, who claimed that they were getting money from Russia, that they were subverting American democracy, that they were promoting Russian propaganda. So they had Lauren Chen, of course, before the committee and browbeating her, just absolutely nagging, trying to get her to say something when her lawyers say clearly she should not be saying anything because this is a major indictment in the United States. And why is she appearing before a committee in Canada to discuss this? But it looks like the House Un-American Activities Committee all over again, where you've got people being forced to talk about their political beliefs, and in this case, journalists being forced to talk about why they ran certain stories. And these people, both sides of the House now, conservatives and liberals, demanding that these people be silenced. So we'll be talking about that with Be Afraid tomorrow and other things as well. And also, of course, what does the election of Donald Trump mean for Canada? And I'm going to show you a clip in a minute here about somebody who gets it. And I'm just amazed that it was almost like a revelation. And I just happened to catch this morning. I don't think anybody else caught this yesterday that I can see. I didn't see it up in any of the usual suspects catching this. So I think it's noteworthy because this is somebody who really was part of the conservative establishment. Even though she was a great environment minister who really didn't want to impose draconian standards on the energy industry because she's from Alberta. She's from Edmonton, actually, originally. And of course, I'm talking about Rona Ambrose, who I knew not well, but I knew when she was a member of Parliament and cabinet minister under Stephen Harper. And I think, like I said, she was a great. She was a great. They didn't call it climate change minister in those days. Thank God, it was the environment minister, and she was the environment minister for a while, and I think health as well. I'm trying to remember. She was, but as I say, she was not sort of on the right of the party. And especially after she was interim leader, she disappeared into Washington D.C. for a while, into academia, and frankly, I had no idea what had become of her. But she did this interview with Vassie Capellas yesterday, and it's fascinating. So let's watch that.
With President Trump once again to strengthen North American economic opportunities for the middle class.
Do you notice, I got to say this, do you notice every time Justin Trudeau puts Donald Trump in a sentence, he talks about the middle class? Suddenly, and of course, Trudeau was a bloody hypocrite about this. He could say nothing good about Donald Trump when Donald Trump wasn't standing next to him, or if Donald Trump wasn't listening. But he loved to say, I remember reporting on this. He used to say, Donald Trump's just like me. We both are fighting for the middle class. Justin Trudeau's not fighting for any middle class. He's fighting for himself. Donald Trump certainly is fighting for the middle class. But I just find it fascinating. Trudeau is once again being the hypocrite that, oh yes, he just can't wait to start working with Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump.
As you just heard there, the Prime Minister says he's looking forward to working with President Donald Trump again, but bilateral relations were rocky, to say the least, during Trump's first term. The renegotiation of NAFTA was a roller coaster. Trump imposed punishing tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. And let's not forget the interpersonal challenges between the two leaders. Remember this hot mic moment in 2019 and Trump's response?
It's a great for 3 minutes.
I'm sure you all remember that.
Well, he's two-faced.
Yeah, he's two-faced, and that was Trump's response.
With me now are two people well acquainted with the challenges during Trump's first term. Rona Ambrose served as interim leader of the Conservatives from 2015 to 2017. She also served on Canada's NAFTA Council during the renegotiations. And Bill Morneau served as Minister of Finance from 2015.
And I didn't include much of Bill Morneau in this clip. And that's not because he didn't actually say some good things. This is a guy who actually left the Trudeau government because he couldn't stop Trudeau from spending. And he was spending too much, even for Bill Morneau. But Morneau actually said in his segment that he thinks this is not the time to be putting energy caps on the oil industry in Canada, not with Donald Trump coming in the park. This is not the time to be fantasizing about the Green New Deal in Canada when Donald Trump is clearly going to repudiate that. This is not the time to be talking about more carbon taxes when Donald Trump is clearly not going to introduce one. So I was quite impressed with the way Morneau was being a political realist here and saying, if Trudeau continues on the same path he's going, he's just going to head for disaster. But let's listen to Rona's comments here.
To 2020. Hi to both of you. It's very nice to see you. I appreciate you making the time for the conversation. I wanted to start off with a quick question, if I could, Mr. Morneau, on the outcome of the election. And if it caught you by surprise at all, or if you have an understanding of why, in your view, Trump did win, what you think the issue set was.
Well, I have to be honest, I wouldn't have taken a bet one way or the other because the polls were so hard to read. But fundamentally, I thought that the challenge that the incumbent, effectively Harris, was facing was inflation. And that's a pretty important challenge for any incumbent government these days. So I don't think we should be surprised that people decided that they wanted to look to a new team. And that's the challenge we face in all Western democracies right now.
Ms. Ambrose, was it inflation? Is that the key, do you think?
I think it was inflation, and I think but it must have been more than that, because his win was so overwhelming. I mean, that is what shocked me the most. I mean, people call him a racist, a Nazi, and everything else, and yet he increased his vote amongst women, amongst minorities, in places that in New York, in places that are heavily Democratic. I mean, it was shocking. I thought he would win because he had the momentum behind him.
Now, does she get it? I think so. She's not saying it's shocking because I didn't want him to win. She's saying it's shocking that it actually happened. And that's what a lot of us a week ago, tomorrow, who were up all night watching this, were saying the same thing. I can't believe it's actually happening the way I thought it would. It's actually happening the way it should be unfolding. We knew Trump was ahead in all these key districts. We knew he was ahead in all of the battleground states. We knew he had about 2 or 3 percentage points ahead of Kamala Harris nationally. We knew he had made huge inroads into the Hispanic vote, the Black vote. Women were going to vote for him like they didn't in the past. So I think Rona gets it.
Kamala Harris made some serious missteps in how she was communicating what she would do different from Biden, but there's got to be more to it. And I think part of it is this sense that Trump, as the strong man, is going to do whatever it takes to protect the borders, to protect the jobs, and settle things in the world that feel chaotic right now. And it's the way he talks to people. And I think that resonated with a lot of Americans.
If I interpret that right, Ms. Ambrose, it's like the context has changed. So the government, and I know, as a conservative, you would disagree with some of the stuff the government has pursued. But, putting aside, I guess, that view, does the change in context in the States, as Mr. Morneau points out, kind of necessitate a different approach on stuff that has been ideologically valuable to the government?
Absolutely. We are in a completely different situation. I mean, the government has an economic update coming up, I think, at the end of November. And I would recommend that if they've written it, they rewrite it and they look at it and make sure that it outlines the domestic economic policies that will make us competitive. I mean,
now, this is just such sound advice. And I don't know what's happened to Rona, because I think probably 5-6 years ago, she would not be talking this way with Donald Trump. She's clearly in sync. She's clearly understanding that Justin Trudeau cannot continue with his woke ideology or his crazy economic plans that's geared around producing electric cars nobody wants to buy. And she gets it. And I think even Bill Morneau is getting it.
We've got 2 trains coming at us. We've got the tariff war that's coming at us from Trump. There's only so much we can control there. And as Bill said, there's things that we can put on the table, and we've got to hit back hard and retaliate with our own tariffs. But the other is within our control, and that's our domestic economic policies. And we know what Trump's going to do. He's going to lower the business tax rate to 15%. Our combined federal provincial is 38%. There's no carbon tax in the US. We have to think about, how do we lower emissions without a carbon tax? The Americans do it. How could we do it? We've just put a cap on production in our oil and gas sector. And we're the only country in the world to do that, which makes energy more expensive. Trump is saying he's going to deregulate in all kinds of sectors to make energy cheaper as an input for businesses and homes. So We just increased the new capital gains tax inclusion rate, which
Exactly. And I'm glad she mentioned the capital gains tax, which has been a dismal failure, not only because it's hurting Canadians, but it's not generating anything near the revenue that the Trudeau government said it would. It's been a huge failure, and it's going to look worse as Trump leads the United States in the opposite direction. And that's exactly what Rona Ambrose is cluing into here.
is a drain on innovators, small businesses, startups. All of these things that we've been pursuing, which is a higher tax agenda, right from the carbon tax to the capital gains tax, is a drain on productivity and it's a drain on investment. So we've got to become more competitive, and we're not doing that here at home. We have a chance to do that. And we're going to continue to be uncompetitive with the US if we don't. So we have a chance to pivot. We need to do that. We've done it in the past when the US has lowered their corporate tax rate. We've done the same thing to make sure that we can continue to attract investment, capital, and businesses to Canada. And we're going to have to react again to maintain or to create some level of competitiveness in our economy.
You've been on the inside of this government, Mr. Morneau. Do you think?
And that is completely accurate. What she's saying is we've got a non-competitive environment in Canada because Justin Trudeau has been doing things based on a green energy ideology. And it's got to stop. And it will stop. Whether Justin Trudeau wants to or not, he will be forced to have a huge reality check. Now, I want to show this at near the end here because I'm just so incredibly impressed how Trump is following through on all of his promises, and he's outlining what the Trump administration is going to look like. Let's have a listen to this.
Those people's names is not going to get them the result they want.
Absolutely. And look, speaking of that, because he's already really getting on with the job, as he said that he would, he has announced that he will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing that only genders recognised by the US government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth. This is what he said.
The bill will also make clear that Title IX prohibits men from participating in women's sports, and we will protect the rights of parents from being forced to allow their minor child to assume a gender which is new and an identity without the parents' consent.
Rachel, how heartening is that to hear?
It's amazing. And what I think really incredible is that this clip is actually from over a year ago. I hadn't realised this till recently, but he ran his entire campaign along with a bunch of other issues, specifically on the gender ideology madness.
Yes.
And people overwhelmingly voted for him because of that. You know, he said he's going to get gender ideology out of schools, out of government. He's going to stop the transing of kids. He's going to restore parental rights, restore women's sex-based rights. And that's what the American people wanted. So I think it's incredible. And what's more incredible is that the entire time he's getting vilified day in and day out by the mainstream media. People voted for him regardless. So I think even that in itself is incredibly hopeful because people are clearly breaking through that mainstream media propaganda where they've been told day in and day out that this person's bad, this person's evil, you know, they hate whoever, and they're looking into things themselves and realising, no, these are the policies we want for our country.
Yeah. One of the things I thought was really interesting was Trump was very willing to talk about trans issues, whereas Kamala Harris, who's very supportive of trans ideology, she did not want to speak about it at all. So I want to ask you, do you think Trump's willingness to talk about protecting women's sport, to protecting women's private spaces will encourage Peter Dutton to take up that issue here in Australia? And do you think for the Liberals that could be a vote winner if they were courageous enough to actually speak about it?
I absolutely think it could be a vote winner, and I think for any politician that decides to campaign on women's sex-based rights and child safeguarding when it comes to, you know, puberty blockers, surgeries, cross-sex hormones, I think that the US has shown that people don't want these things. We're getting contacted day in and day out from parents around the country who are sick of their children being indoctrinated in schools.
Yes, and you know where I'm going to go here, right? And we need to hear that in Canada. We need the Conservative Party to make that a bedrock foundation of the party. Parental rights, no to puberty blockers, no to sex changes for 12-year-olds. They've done this in Alberta. They've done this in Saskatchewan. We need to do this federally. Poilievre needs to do it. I know he said some good things on it. I give him credit for that. Because in Canada, it's taken courage to stand up for these values, to stand up for common sense, because we're so out of whack with our gender ideology and our complete contempt for parental rights in this country. And it goes from teachers, some teachers, school boards, some school boards, provincial governments, municipal governments, and the federal government, all pushing this gender ideology message. And sometimes it's hard, but every time Pierre Poilievre stands up and says, hey, my government's going to be a mind your own business government. We're not going to tell parents how to raise their children. We're not going to presume that the state should be the nanny to your child, or to you for that matter, or that the state should be telling you how to spend your money or how to invest your money, as Justin Trudeau constantly says. All the liberals like to say that. So I'm heartened Donald Trump is following through in all this. All these messages are coming out now because he's assuring the people who voted for him, damn, he's serious. He's going to follow through on what he's promised. He's going to do what he said he's going to do, and it's going to be revolutionary. It really is. And every day I'm just marveling at how the times are a-changing. And believe me, there are people in the deep state in Canada as well as the United States who are shaking in their boots because they know Donald Trump is deadly serious about this and he intends to follow through. Just by saying Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley aren't welcome in my administration, that says volumes about Trump's seriousness and about his credibility and about his willingness to do what he said he's going to do. Thanks for watching today, folks. Please continue to resolve to resist. Please continue to do everything we need to do to have principled conservatives in charge of this country. And that means not just electing conservatives, but making sure they are conservative. Thank you so much for your time. We love you. God bless you. And I will be back again tomorrow with all the news you need to know.